Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Ryan Chapman and we are here today to talk about ransomware, security awareness, and you. I'm very excited to have a captive audience of security awareness folks. I don't get to work with many of you on a day-to-day basis anymore, but I really appreciate what you do, and I'm going to explain why right now. A little bit about me. Again, my name is Ryan Chapman. I work as a principal incident response consultant for BlackBerry Security Services. We effectively operate as like the 911, if you will, for organizations when they have been hit with an incident. And these days, many of those are ransomware. I have around 10 years in the digital forensics space. I'm currently a SANS instructor for Forensic 610 Reverse Engineering. I love that course. And I'm authoring my own course on what? Ransomware. Yeah, that's why I'm here talking about that with y'all. I'm also a lead organizer for CactusCon, which in the Phoenix area of Arizona, the United States, is our large security/hacker conference. I have a lot to say about ransomware. I can sit here and dribble on for days, just go on and on and on. Our time is fairly limited. So what I'm going to do today is talk about ransomware. What is it? What really is ransomware, right? You hear it on the news every day. Let's break it down. What's the deal? What's going on? And then also, we're going to talk about how security awareness can play hand in hand with ransomware in terms of prevention, detection, and response. And then we're going to talk about phishing. We're going to talk a lot about phishing. Why? You'll see. Ransomware utilizes phishing a lot, and that is an understatement. And then we're also going to get into how you can assist specifically with response efforts should, the worst occur. So we've all heard of ransomware, but what the heck is it? Ransomware has evolved and it is no longer a single threat to a single machine, or maybe even a small grouping of machines in a given small like subnet of an environment. In the olden days, right? We're talking like what, 5, 6, 7 years ago, ransomware would affect a few hosts. Now, what we have to deal with is what's known as ransomware as a service. And this is ugly. And what this does is it enables a small group of developers/operators, right? This graphic here, by the way, is from the McAfee crew. They did a great job with it. So I want to give them a little love. The link here will actually go to the article from which our image came. So you have a very small group. These Conti, Revil, or Sonokibi, Lockbit has just released Lockbit 2.0. That's ugly. These groups, they seem massive, they just seem grandiose, but in reality, you'll notice here on the graphic, it's actually much smaller than you may think. Tens of, or even fewer than tens of, technically, people who develop the actual ransomware. And that's one of the problems. The ransomware itself is simply malware. That's all it really is. It's a malware executable that when executed on a machine will encrypt a bunch of files and then give you a message and say, hey, your week or month or year are going to suck. It's basically what happens, right? But they hire, and yes, I mean like literally hire. They have little hiring events and they do interviews and all kinds of stuff. It's disgusting, but it's a business. They hire what they call affiliates. And the affiliates, their primary job is literally to take the malware provided by the developers, get that into environments, and then they try to push to the largest victim base as possible. These affiliates come in the form of initial access brokers. So the initial access brokers, they get malware. And these days, that's also malware as a service, by the way. Those folks, most of them don't actually write the malware. They lease it from yet another group. They use something like Iced ID or Qbot or Quackbot. For years, there was one called Imitet. Super common. Now Hanseater has come back after 5 years, right? All these common malware names, these things are heavily associated with phishing. And they're not necessarily in the past have been associated with ransomware, but now the initial access brokers utilize that software to get into an environment. From there, the quote unquote penetration testers, then their job is to go into the environment and break it wide open and get as far into that environment as they possibly can get. And then you have the negotiators and money mules who move around all the money and all the horrible stuff when, unfortunately, many folks end up paying. So what's going on here? Well, before the ransomware itself ever executes, you have initial access into the environment. You have network enumeration. So simply what that means is a group gets in. right? One user, like a single user, goes click, click, click on something silly, shouldn't have done that. And then what occurs is there's lateral movement throughout the environment, and the threat actors identify, oh, look, that's an Exchange server. Oh, look, that's your domain controller. Oh, look, that's your domain name. The point being is they identify everything in that environment. Then they move to exfiltrate data. This is a very common tactic. In fact, these days, some ransomware groups are focusing solely on data exfiltration and not really even focusing so much on attempting to actually lock or encrypt the environment. They're just stealing data and then holding that over your head for a ransom. Many, many times we see backup systems that are just absolutely decimated and destroyed. And as such, backup and recovery alone is really no longer adequate. It's not exactly a viable solution. And the policy that simply says we have a robust, we have a very robust backup system, like we're fine. No, you're not. You're absolutely not. But when it comes down to it, the overall attack is what we all now refer to as ransomware. So let's take a look at an example ransomware attack. What does it really mean to get hit with ransomware? So in this particular example, I'm taking you over to a website, and this website is known as, well, not that one, that's for later. This is known as the Defer Report, and it is a report that a bunch of folks have gotten together and reported on Revil, aka Sodinokibi ransomware. This is open to the public. You just go Google the Defer Report. I cannot give them enough love. I actually pay for their Patreon. I give them $30 a month. That's how much I like this website and the work that they do. Seriously. So and I'm not affiliated, by the way. You're like, are you just trying to give it? You're trying to get us to give you some money? Like, no, I'm not part of the group. But here's an example timeline, okay, for Sodinokibi or Revil. Now, first up, the initial access comes in at 1805 UTC via malware known as Iced ID. How did that come into the environment? Phishing. Hey, check it out. One user, right? One user's head then becomes what's known as a beachhead host, okay? At that point, Iced ID then runs discovery on the host to identify what users are on here, what users are currently logged in, what software is installed, things like that. And then, look at this, within not even an hour and a half, a commercial penetration testing platform known as Cobalt Strike is deployed within the environment on that host, and it's used for command and control even further. So now there's multiple backdoors. We have Iced ID, now we have Cobalt Strike. Then we have lateral movement in this particular example, by the way, right, in this case. We then have lateral movement to an Exchange server. Potentially they were trying to offload a bunch of email or email logs or something. And then from there, they went to the domain controller. And if you're not familiar with a domain controller, your Windows domain is the network that runs your infrastructure. The domain controller controls that domain, right? So you may have multiple, but typically threat actors want to get to that. And then they started moving laterally around the environment using remote desktop protocol. They may have enabled it. It may have already been enabled within the environment. Oops. Then they start exfiltrating data using a tool known as rclone. Super, super common tool that we see all the time, a tool called rclone. Then they use a BITS admin or background intelligence transfer service. What is that? Here's the thing. It's been included with Windows for I don't know how many years now. It used to be utilized for silent updates in the background, things of that nature, and they just leveraged that. It's called living off the land. They just decided, hey, look, there's this tool here. We can use that to, push ransomware around. Cool. Then they executed the actual ransomware. The entire attack, the final deployment occurs at 22:28 or 10:28 p.m. The initial infection at 6:05 or 18:05. Not even 24 hours in this particular example, right? They exfiltrated data. They moved from the email server to the domain controller, probably impersonating a whole bunch of accounts, all kinds of horrible stuff. And how did it all start? Iced ID. Where did Iced ID come from? A single phishing email. I'm sure they sent more than one email into the environment, but one person fell for it. So how does ransomware get into an environment? Now again, ransomware. How do the ransomware actors get into the environment? The top three that we keep seeing over and over and over. Email phishing. That's our focus today, by the way. RDP, remote desktop protocol. And we always hear from our clients, we don't have RDP exposed to the internet. How did this happen? Well, the answer is, yes, you do. Well, yeah, no, you really do. Trust me, like there's right there. See that? You had it open. Oops. And then others are software vulnerabilities. So while the general IT teams in the environment can help keeping software and network appliances up to date, and while they can hopefully lock down RDP, the protocol resources in the environment, phishing is one of the leading causes of ransomware infections. Because we're not just thinking about how the malware itself got in, we're thinking about how the group initially got into that environment. In the previous example, we saw the iced ID got in. How? Your users can be the absolute hands down best detection resource your entire company could potentially want. You could pay for $1 million systems or tens of millions of dollars in security resources. Emails will get by those suckers. When your users are properly trained by you, that's your job, right? When they're trained to go, nah, this looks stupid, and they report that email, that is phenomenal. And then you can move off of that, perform threat intelligence, and further try to thwart the attack. At the same time, your users could also be the exact reason for ransomware, which we just saw a case when that happened. I see them all the time. Why? Well, many of your users like to click. Here's, I can never show this graphic without laughing. This is 2014, Ryan, without a beard, but clicking happy, just going click, 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 right? Many users do that, unfortunately. It's your job, it's our job as security awareness professionals to try to stop them from doing so by educating them and fostering an environment of vigilance. They also may be using weak passwords, and those are two of the things that I want to focus on in the remainder of this talk. So you can choose your own adventure within your organization. You can leave your users untrained, and your users can go click, 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 and do something silly. Or you can train your users to identify potential malware coming in via phishing, and also, for that matter, to use strong passwords and so on and so forth. All the things that you're already doing now, guess what? That's one of the number one ways. Let me rephrase that. All the things I hope that you're doing already right now, guess what? It's a number one way to thwart ransomware, to prevent it. Many people think it's such a sophisticated attack. It's built like an advanced persistent threat, nation state sponsored. No. There's phishing emails coming in. Someone does a clicky clicky, and iced ID gets dropped, or Imitet, or Hanset, or BokBok, or QBot, or one of those gets dropped, and then you have a horrible day. TrickBot shows up. All these common malware terms. If you're not familiar with these terms, by the way, go Google like TrickBot, and go Google Cobalt Strike. You'll see how common they are and how common they've been for years. Ransomware groups are simply leveraging them through their affiliates these days. So how can you help? You can help big time. You are the trusted advisors within your organizations. And if you're not, I really wish you would become one. All right. You also can help foster that vigilance throughout the workforce. I mean, that's the primary goal of security awareness, right? What else are we doing here? And in doing so, right, you're training your users. You are a vital asset, and you can help with prevention, detection, and yes, response. That was a horrible job of circling the word respond, but you got the idea. All right, so let's get into that as we go through here. Password policies. I really hope you have password policies, right? I mean, come on, your organizations should have them. You, the security awareness teams, should be the ones who are helping to push that throughout the organizations. Now, here's an example. This is not a password policy per se, but rather this is an article from our very own Lance Spitzner, who, by the way, is slightly involved in this particular summit, and also who pulled me in. Hi, Lance, how's it going? I'm showing an article of yours from January of 2019 right now. He's like, what's he doing? So Lance posted this, let me zoom in just a little bit. Yeah. So complexity for your passwords. Now, we all have an idea of password complexity. Your organization, your IT group should already hopefully have a strong policy in terms of what passwords can be created. Okay, so Lance mentions that there is a thin line here between a strong complexity requirement and too strong, but you need to have something. All right, if you allow a user, say that you work for Corporation X, and you allow a user to have a password of Corporation X, and that's it, right? Horrible idea. Or they have a password of, something silly. More on that coming up. That should be a kind of a given these days. But also, password sharing. Many users like to share accounts. I cannot stress enough, just like Lance says here, that your passwords should not be shared within an organization. If individual users need access to certain things, they should have their own accounts. And if you do need to share passwords, please use a vaulting type of application. The one that comes to mind for me, and again, no relation here, but I have experience, CyberArk. If you have service accounts, for example, that your various IT users need to use, you should be training in your security awareness that essentially they should be vaulted and they should require multi-factor access to actually pull that password out temporarily. The password then gets rotated and reset. And now if someone else even had it or got it, it would no longer be good. That does require a technological solution, however. Dual use. Many of your users are going to use their passwords for all kinds of other services. And we see this in ransomware infections. We see a user who is on a website. Here, just example. These are examples, not those. Some website gets pwned, if you will, right? And they have a data leak. In that data leak, you may have some of your user passwords. Some of those passwords are reused within your environment. So in other words, you may have your domain account, a user's domain account, have the same password as some site that gets a data leak. And then, you see what I'm saying here? They're going to try that and you're going to have a bad time. Public computers, passwords should not be saved. And also, in general, I highly recommend for security awareness that you push not saving passwords to a browser, like a standard like Microsoft Edge, Firefox, Chrome. When it goes, you want to save that? And people go, yeah, I don't want to keep typing that stupid thing in. Don't do that. Use proper password managers if you're going to, and that I recommend that so you can have strong, secure passwords. But many pieces of malware, including the ones I've already mentioned, like Iced ID, by the way, which is so common and just comes in via phishing like it has since, I don't know, 2010 or something ridiculous. It's been around forever. I made that date up, by the way. I forgot when it came out, but it's been a long time. If they save their passwords to the browser, then these malware tools will go, oh, I want that one and that one and that one and that one. And they just pulls the passwords out. That's bad. You're going to have a bad time with that. Right? So, and of course, we're talking about phishing as we go along, so I will digress on that. A couple things that you should train your users. Please avoid at all costs the summer 2021 season. That's the word I wanted. I was like, what's that word called? Summer, winter, fall, whatever, and then the year. Whether you have the exclamation point at the front or the back, or it's a number 6 or a 7 or a single digit, whatever it is, avoid those. The threat actors are utilizing those. They're brute forcing using parameters that include those. Please avoid that at all costs. And try to get your users to not enumerate passwords. In other words, password 1, oh, I have to change it? Okay, password 2, and so on and so forth, because threat actors will try that. So I want to talk about phishing identification. And I know that we don't have a ton of time today, but I have provided two. I provided myself, actually. I have two. I'm not giving these to you. You don't want these. 2 example emails. This is a malware analysis environment. Do not do what I'm doing, obviously. But if I open up one of these emails, here's an email that your user may receive inbound. Okay, I pulled this from a known reputable virus sharing website. And this was a legitimate phish along with legitimate malware contained within. So this particular message is attempting to look as though it is a shipping related to logistics, right? So in here, if I zoom in, you'll see it's an RE, right? A reply to something. No, it's not. That conversation never happened. Also, if you look at this, copy with shipping doc and confirmed delivery destination. What? That's grammatically incorrect. Copy with shipping doc and confirmed delivery, and then what, an action request? What? That doesn't compute, right? In this case, there's a .zip file. Train your users specifically to be wary of .zip files. You probably can't have them blocked by IT. Don't do the following. I'm going to do it. When a user double clicks on a zip file and they're prompted to open it, Windows opens it as though it's a folder. It looks like a folder. Now, in reality, there's actually a location here where this is temporarily residing, and the .zip file itself is technically extracted and sitting in a temporary location in your Windows directory already. You have malware sitting on the system, essentially. And this right here is literally an executable. If I double click that, we're gonna have a bad time with the rest of this presentation. It's not gonna work out very well. So your users, however, are apt to open zip files, even in an email like this, where there's not really a whole lot else to kind of work off of, and you could look through some of the wording here and the fact that computer system has a new line in there. Yeah, you could train them on that intricate type of stuff, but general attachments should be very, very wary of those. Another example, and this one looks a lot better. Okay, this is made to look as though it's coming from DHL, and it looks, fairly convincing. It's a spoofed address here. I could show you the headers, but your users aren't going to see that, right? So it looks like it's coming from DHL. The graphic utilization here, the template that they probably just stole, it looks decent, right? And then right here, it's basically saying, hey, the password to get this is your email password. What? No, that should be a specific thing you train your users on, because even ones that look pretty darn good like this, look at this. DHL Express, excellence, simply delivered. Like, look, it looks pretty decent, to be honest. Now I can pick little itty bitty weird things out of here, but your users may not see that. They'll see their own name in here, and they'll see I have to use my password to get access to it, right? Now, if I open up the HTML file, and you don't, by the way, don't do this. If I open this up, what your user would see is they would see a login form like this, and it would already have their, in this case, it already has their email. They put the password, they hit enter, right? What just happened? Well, what really happens in this case, I'm going to go ahead and save this little sucker. We're going to go security awareness, totally legit email. We're going to open this guy up. We're going to open it in Notepad++. And just show you some code in here. There is what is known as a form, and the form actually collects the email address and password. So here's a reference to a password being entered. Here's a reference to an email address being provided. And essentially, when the user actually submits that form, it's posting the credentials, whatever they put in, to this address. This is where this one happens to be going. That doesn't look like DHL to me. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Sarv Bazaar? Sarv Bazaar. I may have hit that actually, I'm not sure. But the point is, your users, like, what do they avoid in this case? HTML attachments, another big thing to avoid. This one looks pretty decent. In general, DHL and other companies should not be sending HTML attachments. And if they are, well, then tell your users to check their packages at home. Infect their home networks. Sorry, bad joke. Don't do that. All right. What else should your users do? What happens when they identify these things? Your primary task is to train them to report the email, or maybe report the email, or perhaps maybe report the freaking email. Okay, the goal is to report that email. Also, it's important that you work with your IT teams to ensure that when those emails are reported, that they're getting adequate review on the other side. Is someone looking at those emails adequately? Now, you have to work with IT and security to identify what exactly do you do when you receive a phishing email. Now, phishing is very, very simple. And I'm going to show you just how quickly tools such as phishing kits and tools can allow a threat actor to get or to generate a malicious document. So I am literally going to pop into a Windows machine, and I have already downloaded a tool called Lucky Strike. By the way, I'm a blue teamer. I am not what is known as a red teamer or a pen tester. I'm not trained to create attacks. I'm trained to detect them, if that makes sense. In this case, any simple process like writing code in what's called PowerShell. Hello world. I hit enter, and this sucker has already given me the ability within 10 seconds to obfuscate that command. So I went onto the internet, I went onto Google, and I typed in PowerShell malware downloader. That's literally what I searched, I'm not kidding. And I've saved it into this tool. In this tool, I basically just go, hey, I want to make a payload, right? What kind? And then it asks you, you want to make an Excel file or a Word document? And I say, Excel, please. And then I give it my example code. How do you want to embed it? I don't know, number 1. Now, I know, but I'm just saying, like, even if you're not the uninitiated, right? I go back, and then I go back again. It says, what do you want to do? I want to make a file. You want to make a new file? I do. And then it says, hey, I made you a file. And I say, oh, okay. And it goes right there to this payloads directory. I go take a look at it. Go over here, and then right there, and boom, I have a file that the user could then open and all of a sudden have a malware infection. Now, this looks boring, right? So I'm a threat actor, okay? So I just go to Google, like literally, this is Google Images, and I typed in how to enable content, right? And I got this site, which gives me a really perfect picture with a little arrow that points right at enable content. And I go, oh, I'm just going to copy that guy. And then we'll go over here, I'll just paste it in there. And then we're going to say, hey, this is a protected document. To view this file, please click enable content. And then we'll go ahead and just, make that bold, and we'll make it nice and big. Looks official, right? And then we save that file, we close that file, and then we'll call it something like invoice da 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 da. Now this simply just needs to be sent then via email. When the user opens it up, it looks pretty darn legitimate, right? Well, hopefully it shouldn't to you. But this is a protected document. Did I spell it right? Hopefully I was typing kind of odd there. So what would happen if the user actually click enable content? Well, we're going to pretend like this is the malware server that I've set up. And we've got a web server running and we're going to capture traffic. So I capture traffic. Watch this. The user clicks enable content. And then in the background, what happens is, there we go. We have a resolution for example.malware.download.bad.com. And here is the request that Microsoft Excel just made in the background, unbeknownst to the user. Look, see the user? They're still going like, well, what the heck? I clicked enable content. Yeah, you did. You sure did. Because looky, if this were really weaponized, and if I didn't go modify it as for an example for today's talk, this could have actually been the next stage of malware to infect that machine. How long did it take me to make that? Am I a hacker? No, I'm the antithesis of a hacker. I'm the opposite of that. And yet this tool made it trivial for me to create that content. And that's something else I wanted to show you. Not just how simple it is for ransomware, right? What is ransomware? This massive attack, right? Well, yeah, it's people that get paid to break in. How? Doing what I just did. Literally doing what I just did, right? But then eventually getting that malware deployed in the environment and shutting down an entire corporation. Like, it's so easy for them to do that, right? Well, it is. And all it takes is for one user to make a mistake. If that one user does make a mistake, you can also assist with response in security awareness land. You are the trusted advisor. And if you are not, please make yourself establish trust and authority. Do this by contacting the security team, work with them. If you don't know them on a first name basis, fix it. Go fix it. Understand who they are. Are they internal? Are they external? What do they do? You need to work with them and understand what their strengths and weaknesses are. They can also work with you and identify what's coming inbound, especially if you're still mid-incident and there's more threats coming in. Also, utilize your rapport with the various teams, but also your end users. Your end users already communicate with you or vice versa. You know the communication mechanisms. You know the distribution lists. You know how to get a hold of people. You also have records on who's been trained on what. You can help organize. To help organize, you can inform users what's happening. Now, obviously, that would be through working with someone like the incident commander. However, you are a major asset to the business incident response team, or the BIRT. BIRT. I've always hated that name. It's silly when you say it out loud. But the business incident response team can really use you because you are adept already, or you wouldn't be in this position, right? Working in security awareness or being involved with it. You are adept at functioning as a liaison. And your goal, oh, I said that really well. I'm proud of myself. At least I think I did. I don't know. It just made me happy. You are really good at taking the technical terminology and translating it, right? The technical things that need to occur in order for users to remain safe, right? You can translate that. And you know who could really use that translation? Your executives, your board members. You can communicate with the business incident response team and the incident commanders to ensure that that communication is as smooth as it can possibly be. Do not let yourself be underutilized. Your job does not end. Security awareness does not end with initial training and notification. It's an ongoing process, and you can help during response because you have a lot of knowledge about how to communicate with others in your org, and you should definitely leverage that in the face of any incident, and especially in ransomware. So I know we didn't have a ton of time together, and I know that I fired off a whole bunch of information to you, but I'm really passionate about trying to thwart the threat of ransomware, and I truly believe that security awareness is a key. You're pivotal, crucial, all of the above, right? To dealing with ransomware or outright simply trying to prevent it. So again, my name is Ryan Chapman with BlackBerry Security Services, and I appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me.